NYPD would be the ones to do so.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer, then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay, you can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do.
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement, about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis for New Yorkers.
You've also said in the past that President Trump has engaged in a, quote, attack on our democracy. You've called him a despot. Do you still believe President Trump is a threat to the democracy?
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe. And that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table. Because I'm not coming into the Oval Office to make a point or make a stand. I'm coming in there to deliver for New Yorkers. And a few weeks ago, I was asked by a reporter 3 words to describe myself. I said, New York City. And that's what animated that conversation. How do we deliver for the people of New York City?
I think that some of your supporters would be curious to know. You say you stand by your past statements that, yes, he's a threat to the democracy. How do you square working with someone who you still think is a threat to the democracy?
I think working for the people of New York City demands that you work with everyone and anyone, and that you always look to find those areas of agreement while not overlooking the places of disagreement. And I think this was something that came up in our meeting. We spoke about immigration. We spoke about the fact that in New York City, we have sanctuary city policies that allow for the city to work with the federal government on around 170 serious crimes. The concern for so many New Yorkers comes about anything beyond that. And I spoke about the importance of us being able to protect New Yorkers, and some of the incidents that we see, they do not do that.
Boy. So we got to talk about the mainstream liberal media reaction to the meeting between President Trump and Zohran Mamdani. Okay, 2 politicians on the opposite side of the political spectrum. The liberal media was shocked by the fact that the meeting was cordial, that they didn't seem to hate each other, at least not publicly. We don't know what was said behind closed doors. But Zohran is coming out and basically saying that he still thinks that President Trump is a fascist, right? And I don't think that President Trump really takes Zohran too seriously when it comes to that. But the reality is that from a political perspective, Zohran needs Trump a lot more than Trump needs Zohran, right? And that is the reality of this meeting that a lot of leftists are missing, because they're trying to make it seem as if President Trump was bending the knee to Zohran, or that Zohran somehow, some way got over Trump. And I don't think that that's actually the case, right? I think that President Trump is using Zohran Mamdani and not necessarily the other way around, because President Trump is the power player in that relationship. And we're already starting to figure out that Zohran is basically bending the knee to the power players, the real power players already, because he's folded on the socialist takeover of the Democrat Party. And he also doesn't seem to be confident that he can convince Hochul to tax the rich in order to pay for his socialist utopia. Take a look.
2 more quick questions. If Democrats win the midterms, do you want to see Leader Jeffries become the Speaker of the House?
Yes.
Okay. That was a firm, quick answer. So you leave plenty of time for my final answer. You have said that you want to raise $9 billion in new taxes, increasing taxes on the wealthy, on businesses, in order to fund your key policies like universal child care, which you mentioned. You would need Governor Kathy Hochul to be on board with this. You'd need her signature. She has never publicly committed to increasing taxes. I know you just spoke with her. Mr. Mayor-elect, did Governor Hochul commit to you that she will support and sign on to your plan to increase taxes?
The governor and I had a productive conversation, and what we both committed to is working together for the affordability agenda. And one thing I appreciate of the many about Governor Hochul is that she's been focused not just on affordability, but specifically on universal child care for quite some time. And now is the time to bring a partner forward in City Hall. And I've said plainly and openly that I believe that these are 2 tax proposals that make sense, increasing the personal income taxes on New Yorkers making $1 million or more by just 2%, increasing the top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey. And what I've also said is more important than how we fund something is that we fund something. And if there are additional or alternate revenue streams to do so, I will accept them and I will celebrate them, because the most important thing is to actually deliver for the New Yorkers who right now can't even conceive of having a family in New York City because of how expensive we've made childcare across the 5 boroughs.
Well, and your entire agenda is incredibly ambitious: universal childcare, free buses, among other things, lowering rent. Can you deliver on this agenda without Governor Hochul agreeing to increase taxes?
Well, I'm thankful that I'm not going to have to engage in the hypothetical, because I am confident of the two of us working together to deliver on this agenda and ensure that finally, and this goes back to just that portrait of FDR, we look at what politics has been in the past. It has been there in the moments of such transformation, meeting the scale of the crisis. We can do that again.
So just yes or no, you think she'll raise taxes?
I think she'll work with me to deliver on affordability. I think raising taxes make the most sense. If there's any alternative that raises the same amount of money, I'm open.
All right.
Yeah, so I want you guys to read between the lines here, right? Because you got to pay attention to what people do, not necessarily what they say, but what they say can tell you a lot, or what they don't say can also tell you a lot as well, too. What he's doing, he's meeting with Trump. He's already backed Hakeem Jeffries. Like, that's an action. He's saying, yeah, Hakeem should be leader, while at the same time, the far left base is saying, no, we want to get rid of Hakeem Jeffries, right? He's backing Hakeem Jeffries. He represents what is supposed to be the socialist takeover of the Democrat Party, and he's already bending the knee to the same individuals, the same people that he ran his campaign on taking down. Also, on top of that, he's non-committal about whether or not he can get Hochul to raise taxes so that he can fund his socialist utopia. Basically, what Zohran is finding out, again, is that he ain't got that much power, right? And I think what is happening is that he understands that, well, I need President Trump to not defund New York City, right? I need Hakeem Jeffries to also not undermine my agenda using his influence in New York. He needs Kathy Hochul to play ball when it comes to trying to find a way for him to do basically anything that he's trying to do, all of his free stuff, right? This guy clearly is weak, right? He is weak, okay? And I think leftists are already starting to pick up on this, at least to a certain extent, because they're not happy about Zohran folding on things like, for example, taking out Hakeem Jeffries.
Mamdani also appeared to discourage his fellow Democratic Socialists of America member on Monday. Quote, I believe that there are many ways right here in New York City to both deliver on an affordability agenda and take on the authoritarian administration in the White House, Mamdani told reporters of ASE. Ocasio-Cortez told Axios during a brief interview at the U.S. Capitol that she was not aware that ASE was challenging Jeffries, but she added, I certainly don't think a primary challenge to the leader is a good idea right now. Ocasio demurred on other races, declining to weigh in on whether she would support New York City Comptroller Brad Lander if he runs against Representative Dan Goldman. ASE filed paperwork with the Federal Election Commission on Monday to run for Jeffries' district, which covers portions of Brooklyn. He said in a statement he is exploring a run because Democratic leadership is not only failing to effectively fight back against Donald Trump, they have also failed to deliver a vision that we can all believe in. Jeffries, who had previously repeatedly dismissed the notion of an ASE primary challenge, told reporters at a press conference Monday, come on in, the water is warm. So here's why this is disappointing. This guy who's running against Hakeem Jeffries, Zohran, that was you. That was you. You were running against the golden child. You were running against the establishment's man. You were running against Andrew Cuomo. You also ran against, Eric Adams, for example. So with this sort of mindset that you're now applying to this guy, people applied it to you and they said, what are you doing? We already have our candidates. We already have Eric Adams. We already have Andrew Cuomo. They represent the Democratic brand. Like, just let them cook. But you said, no, it's not good enough. They're not good enough. They don't fight Trump. They don't deliver on actual leftist values. We're going to stand up and actually represent something, and we're going to change the Democratic Party, and we're going to have our Democratic Tea Party moment. And so people said that about you, right? But you didn't listen to them, and then you went on to win. AOC, this was you. You were this guy, except you did it against Joe Crowley, who was like next in line to be a Democratic leader, and you beat him, and I'm fucking happy that you did. Now, look, I get it. Some people will say, well, steelman their argument. Okay, to steelman their argument, they feel like in order to get any of our agenda done, we need the buy-in from the more centristy of the people from within our coalition, from within our caucus, from within our party. So they can't feel like we're their enemy as we're trying to like get stuff done with them right now. And so basically the argument is like, hey, I think we can convince Jeffries and others to go along with our agenda, but he's only going to do that if I show support for him over the person fucking running against him, right? Like, that's the mindset. Here's why that falls apart, though. AOC is definitely either going to run for the Senate or run for president. So you're not even going to be in the House that much longer. Like, you're not. So why not just tell the truth? Why not just say this guy sucks at fighting Trump? Why not just say he's bought by fucking AIPAC and it's time to have a real Democratic Tea Party and have a bunch of AOCs and Zohran Mamdanis get elected? Why not just tell the truth?
The reason why is because you idiots have been hoodwinked, led astray, run amok once again, right? And you don't understand the reality of politics, that Zohran and AOC as well too, they do not have any real power, right? That's the reality, is that they still have to kiss up to the people with actual power in order to do anything, right? They have to be allowed to do the things that they want to do, which means they're going to have to make some concessions, okay? Zohran is going to have to make some concessions to Hochul. Zohran is going to have to make some concessions to Hakeem Jeffries. Zohran is going to have to make some concessions to Trump. Do you think that the guy who went and met with President Trump in the White House, smiling, kiki and ha-ha, right? You think that guy really got over Trump? You really think that that guy has any power over Trump, any leverage over Trump? That he cucked Trump? Do you really believe that? Right? Nobody really believes that. He went to the White House like a hungry dog, right? He needs some food. Hands out, begging, right? Please don't defund us. Please don't send ICE, right? That's essentially what that meeting was about. Let's keep it 100, right? So, with that being said, I want to react to this panel discussion here on ABC, as a Republican is going to give a reality check to some of the liberals on this panel about, again, how that meeting with Zohran and Trump actually went down.
Exactly that question to you, Neera. And Mamdani was very conciliatory as well, although apparently just a few minutes ago he said on NBC that he still thought the president was a despot and a fascist. So maybe that's breaking down a little bit. But what's your take on all of this?
You know, I feel like the greatest level of sadness for all the Republican ad makers who were spending weeks and maybe months plotting out the ads they were going to run against Democrats. All these people saying, "Oh, he's going to be this big weight on the Democratic Party."
The poster boy, right?
The poster boy for the midterms. Mike Johnson just last week said the whole victory was about Mamdani and that he's the new leader of House Democrats, even though that sounded kind of crazy. And what actually, Donald Trump just evaporated all of that. And any ad that any kid comes up, everyone can just show how much the president was very fond of Mamdani. And, I thought that it was a great accomplishment, actually, that he was able to maneuver this meeting. Mayor-elect Mamdani was able to maneuver this meeting, but also just a true sign how much the affordability message, which was really resonant for Democrats last week, is really just is front and center.
Yeah, so let me explain why President Trump and Zohran Mamdani being chummy, right, in the White House does not hinder Republicans from attacking Zohran Mamdani. Because, again, it's going to be about what he does, right? He hasn't done anything yet. He said a bunch of stuff, but remember, he hasn't done anything. It's one thing to say, okay, rhetoric is one thing, doing is another, right? We don't know what he's going to do. The president doesn't know what he's going to do. Nobody knows what he's going to do. Well, actually, I have a good clue about what he's going to do. He's not going to do much at all, really. I actually kind of know what he's going to do. He ain't going to really do that much just based off what he's doing right now, right? But the reality is this, right? Is that based off what he does, we're going to see what the results are, right? We're going to see what his rhetoric is. And that is going to determine how much of a target he will be for Republicans. Right now, the only thing we have is rhetoric. So, yes, he's an easy target rhetorically because he's an open socialist. But we got to see the results. If New York City becomes a dumpster fire, right, and he starts defunding the police, which, by the way, he committed to not defunding the police. He also decided to keep the police commissioner as well, too. which again is another sign that he ain't gonna really do that much, right? Because he doesn't. The last thing he wants is to destroy that city and then have the GOP point at him and say, listen, this is an example why these people shouldn't get elected. That's the last thing that he wants. So again, the reality here is that depending on how he actually performs and what he does, we're going to see, right? In regards to whether or not the GOP is actually going to be able to use him as a prop to attack during the midterms. The meeting between the president and Zohran, it doesn't mean anything. The president has met with a lot of people that he's turned around and attacked later, right? It happens. That's the reality of politics. It's about what is he going to do moving forward. We really don't know that much yet because he's not in office. You got to give it a chance. Let's see what he does, and then we go from there. Rhetorically speaking, yes, he's a far-left socialist. But in regards to how he actually governs, that remains to be seen.
And Reince, I want you to take all that on. The Republicans really are going, whoa, wait a minute, I guess we don't have Mamdani to push around anymore, make the poster boy. What was your take on what happened in the Oval Office? Do you think President Trump planned that, or he was just taken by Mamdani?
No. Well, I guess maybe both. I thought it was classic Trump. I mean, this is like pure Trump, one-on-one. He is charming. He's very good with people one-on-one. But it's also the fact that, number one, a Trumpism is just because you're enemy doesn't mean I'm not going to do a deal with you. Nobody's ever a permanent enemy. He loves winning over
or a permanent
critics.
Friend.
Or he loves winning over critics. But I thought it more or less, I kind of disagree. I think it eviscerated Mamdani more than Trump, because Trump supporters like myself, we know that Donald Trump will bring in enemies and charm them and get a deal done with them. But Mamdani is supposed to be pure. Mamdani is this guy who's this new found sensation, and there he was standing next to Donald Trump, completely charmed and out of his mind. And the second thing I'd say is that, as a reminder, I've said this for weeks, economic populism of the left in many ways sounds a lot like economic populism of the right. So I have no doubt that they had a meeting and they talked a lot about those issues. Sticking it to billionaires, giving it back to the little guy is one of the most Trumpy things there is. So there could be some things that they have in common. And I do think the culture wars will come back, and maybe Mamdani will reignite that sometime down the road.
Yeah, I think that Reince Priebus here is pretty spot on, right? I think that Trump did eviscerate Mamdani just because of the fact that Mamdani felt the need to meet with the president in the first place. Mamdani is the one that requested the meeting with Trump, not the other way around, okay? So again, that tells you in and of itself, again, who needs who more, right? Mamdani needs Trump. So Mamdani is the guy that said that Trump is a fascist, that Trump is basically the worst thing ever, right? That he's going to be Trump's worst nightmare. This is what he claimed. But yet, he's the one that went to Trump. Trump didn't go to him. Mamdani went to Trump. So that's what people got to understand, right? And him just being in the same room and acknowledging that he needs the president is a defeat in and of itself. On top of all the other things that we know as well, too, about Mamdani saying, hey, we shouldn't be primarying Hakeem Jeffries, right? Like, well, he doesn't know if he's going to be able to get Hochul on board with the, tax the rich stuff, right? Like, again, you're starting to kind of really see that this guy, he knows his position, right? He knows. And we saw this. I mean, this is normal, right? We saw with Eric Adams how weak the New York City mayor is, okay? We've seen that. So that's just the reality of the situation. Now, some of you guys may be asking, well, what does Trump get out of this? Well, it's a win-win for Trump, and I'm going to tell you why. If Trump can drag Zohran Mamdani to the right on certain issues, like, for example, on illegal immigration and on crime, then that's a win for Trump. Because Trump can say, hey, yeah, because of federal cooperation, we've cleaned up the city. He's not going to do all the socialist stuff that he claims, right? All the tax stuff, that's going to be on the state, right? That's going to be on the Democrats at the state level. He doesn't have that much control over that. What he does have control over, again, crime, cooperating with the federal government on illegal immigration. Yeah, I mean, that is something that he has an option to work with the president on. If he doesn't want to work with the president on it, and New York City becomes a crime-ridden hellhole, or more of a crime-ridden hellhole than it already is, right? Then the administration can say, well, he chose not to work with us, right? And because he rejected us, he rejected our cooperation. Based off that meeting, we were open about working with him and trying to crack down on crime, but he decided not to. So it's on him, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. He can win. President Trump can win if Mamdani is successful on certain things that align with the administration, okay? Because we already know, again, on the tax stuff, on the socialist stuff, economic stuff, he ain't got really that much power. It's about what does he actually have power over, and that is where he actually needs to cooperate with the federal government on, right? Those things, okay? Zohran needs federal funding to deal with the issue of crime. He needs federal funding to deal with the issue of immigration. New York City and the federal government closely cooperate when it comes to those issues specifically. And President Trump holds all the cards, right? AKA the money, right? When it comes to those specific issues. So Trump has a lot of leverage over Zohran to pull Zohran to the right on those issues of where he otherwise would be, because again, the federal government controls the money, right? On those specific issues, Trump has a lot of power and control over that, okay? So Zohran needs Trump a lot on those issues. Again, that's the push and pull here that people got to understand. Trump understands that, hey, there are certain groups of my supporters that did support Zohran Mamdani. I know it sounds weird, but this is what they say. They say that some people that vote for AOC also voted for Trump. It is what it is. I think there's some truth to that because Zohran is seen as a populist. Trump is seen as a populist. AOC is seen as a populist, just on different sides of the political spectrum. So there is going to be some overlap. So he can low-key kind of say, listen, we're all populist, right? We're all in the populist bucket, the anti-establishment bucket, right? But at the same time, if push come to shove, if Mamdani doesn't play ball on certain issues where he actually should cooperate with the federal government on, right, then he can easily distance himself. Easily. It's easy, right? He didn't get all the way in bed with Zohran like Hochul did, talking about, tax the rich, right, at the rallies, doing all this stuff. He didn't get all the way in bed with Zohran. So, again, there's a difference. And I think Trump is playing this correctly. Give the man an opportunity. Let's see what actually happens. Let's see what he's willing to do and what he's not willing to do. But, again, I think that this Republican here was correct in regards to his diagnosis of what happened. Yeah, Trump has eviscerated Zohran. Just the fact that Zohran felt the need to meet with the president, again, it just tells you everything you need to know, right, about the power dynamics of that relationship. And that's why all these leftists out here believing that Zohran somehow, some way got over Trump. It's just silly nonsense, right? It's just not grounded in reality of the power dynamics that are currently at play. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.